Mr. Redline.
Welcome to the Commercial Appeal, and welcome to the editorial board endorsement interview process. And I want to welcome Cody Fletcher here, and also welcome you to give an opening statement. The question is, why did you decide to run, and what would you hope to accomplish if you're elected?
Sure, so thank you for having me. My name is Cody Fletcher. I'm running for City Council Super District 9-3. I'm running for City Council for a lot of different reasons, but the most pressing is that I think Memphis is on a good path, just overall and generally, and I think we have been heading on that path for the past few years, and I think it's important to me that we continue moving on that path. I'm a community servant at heart. I've volunteered for lots of different organizations for several years. I'm vice president of my neighborhood association. I work day to day running a neighborhood development corporation that uplifts the university district. And so I'm very vested in improving our city, improving our neighborhoods. It's very important to me. And so I'm running for those reasons. I'm also running because I have a 5-year-old son, and he's going to grow up here in this city. And I remember growing up in Memphis, and I think we're in a better place now than we were when I was growing up, and so I want the same thing for him. I just want to work really hard to make sure we have a better city for when he's older. And some of the other reasons, Memphis, we are facing a lot of challenges. We live in a really, really great city, but we have a lot of big challenges. Crime is a big challenge in Memphis. Blight and litter is a big problem, and bringing good jobs, high-paying jobs, to our city is something that we need people on the council who will work hard to do. We have a big issue of poverty in Memphis, and I believe the way to find yourself out of poverty is to get a good education, but then also have a job waiting for you when you get out of school. And so that's something that I really hope to work hard on the city council.
So let's dive into the issues, Cody. And one of the things you mentioned was crime and blight. And I want to talk to you a bit about violent crime especially. It's one of the top issues we hear time and again from candidates, whether it's a district race in council or it's a mayoral campaign. What would be your approach to try and revert some of the violent crime trends we see in Memphis, and particularly the murder rate, which this year is on pace to hit about 200, which is below the record number in 2016, but still that is a worrisomely high number for our city in this region. So what would you do to address crime?
Sure, so that is a very worrisome number. 200 people being murdered in a city is just sad. What I will do as a city council member is support our public safety police officers and our firefighters. Specifically, I think we need to get the complement of police officers back to where it was a few years ago. I think that number is around 2,400 officers, and I think right now we're around 2,000. So we're short-staffed in our police department. There's a lot of reasons for that, but we have to get more officers on the street. I believe that community policing is something that's very important, making sure our police officers are interacting with the people who they're serving, not just when there's a call or a crime, but all the time. And I think the way to accomplish that is by having more officers so that they're not stressed out, they're not short-staffed, they're able to be more proactive in their policing. Things like Blue Crush, data. I'm a big believer in data, and if there's a way to help our officers by getting them better technology or better data, I think that's something we need to do. It's a holistic thing. It's not just about more police officers. It's also about investing in pre-K. It's investing in summer youth programming. When kids get out of school in the summertime, sometimes they find themselves bored, and so they start to look for things to do, and then sometimes that leads to them getting in trouble. And so I think us having a good youth programming in the summertime is very important. And then again, back to the pre-K, I commend the current city council for finding a creative way to fund the pre-K seats. I would like to work towards a real universal pre-K system.
You mentioned earlier that you are vice president of the neighborhood association.
Right.
What issues and what things have come up in that work for you that help inform how you would govern as a legislature?
Sure. So neighborhood associations, it's really the basic stuff. It's people who are coming together for a common good to improve their neighborhood. And the specific things they're talking about are really services. They're talking about, how do we get these potholes fixed? Last week our trash wasn't picked up. The street lights out. How do we fix that? And those are things that, truly the city council on a certain level, it's a city services business. And so having experience with working with Public Works and working with other city divisions on getting these small things fixed, getting potholes filled, street lights turned back on, those are things that I have experience with doing. Simultaneously, in my neighborhood, one of the things that we talk about a lot is development. So you'll have, particularly the neighborhood I live in, we're starting to see developers come in and buy old houses and renovate those and then sell them for a pretty good profit. And so that's a good thing. It's good to have economic growth, but also at the same time, you have to preserve. I live in a historic neighborhood in Memphis, and so you want to be careful about preserving the historic nature of a neighborhood. So to answer your question, it's those really basic sort of constituent services that you see as a neighborhood association officer.
And you're in the Highland Row area?
Yeah. So East Bunton neighborhood, which is just west of Highland, right beside the University of Memphis.
Gotcha. Talk to me a bit about the issue of affordable housing and infill development. And I'm not sure it's relevant as much in East Bunton, but throughout the city you have vast tracts of vacant lots, east, north, and south Memphis, and you have a need for affordable housing and a need for just more housing, period.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you, based on your experience, both at U of M, or based on your experience with the neighborhood association, that you could bring to the fore for how to develop more housing, whether it's apartments or single-family housing?
Sure. So when I think about affordable housing, first thing that comes to mind for me is Fraser. I grew up in Fraser, and Steve Lockwood, who runs the Fraser Development Corporation, he has done a fantastic job of working to provide affordable housing. And of course, what he does is running a development corp. They purchase housing that has been dilapidated or abandoned or whatever.
Tax sale,
Yeah, or tax sales. And they renovate it, and then they work. It's not just, they don't just sell it to somebody. They really work. They have caseworkers who work with people to fix their credit scores and to really walk them through the home buying process. And then once they get into the house, they have a mortgage that is affordable. And I'm sure you've seen the billboards, the $400 a month to own a house.
Less than rent.
Yeah, it is. So that's a really unique and I think effective model for getting people into housing. And that addresses something you mentioned, where we have parts of our city like Fraser where you can drive down a street and you can see 10, 12, 15 abandoned, boarded up houses in a row. So it's not like we have a shortage of land. I mean, in Memphis, it's a gigantic city when you talk about square mileage. And it's important to your point, to allow people to have affordable housing. On another point to that, when we talk about economic incentives like pilots, one of the misconceptions about those is people may not know is there's an affordable housing component for pilots that are going to residential projects. So that's another way to address that.
Okay. Let's talk about poverty for a minute. And I'm sure you know all the statistics, some of which come out of U of M's various offices.
Mm-hmm.
The rate for children in poverty in this city is rivaling almost 40%.
Yeah.
And the rate for citizens in general is about 25%. Next to New Orleans, we have one of the highest poverty rates in the nation, second only to New Orleans area. What could you do, what policies could you put forth to try and address generational poverty, to try and reverse some of those trends?
Sure. So I think, again, when I think about combating poverty, to me, education is the most important thing you can do to help somebody get out of poverty. And I think it starts at pre-K. The city, again, the city council was able to fund some pre-K seats. I would like to work to have true universal pre-K, so that every child in Memphis is able to have access to pre-K. I think that's how early you have to catch people. That's where it starts. Obviously, the city council is not involved currently in the Shelby County school system, but having good schools is important. I think what the city can do, again, I mentioned it earlier, is to provide good extracurricular programming. So summer programming is something that keeps people busy, keeps people out of trouble, keeps them on track with their education. And then, again, once people graduate school, finding them either to a four-year college, trade schools are something that I think is important to Memphis, getting people into trade schools, but having jobs, having high-paying, good jobs for people. Again, I don't think there's a better cure for poverty than just a really good job, and I know everyone in Memphis is looking for that. It's not like there's anyone out there who just decides, this is what I want for myself. I want to live in poverty. I don't think that exists. I think everybody wants to have a good job and provide for their families.
Absolutely. The other kind of a subset to that poverty question, and this is something where unfortunately Memphis also leads the nation in the number of opportunity youth, those between 16 and 24 who are neither employed nor in school. Mm-hmm. And as I hear from some of the experts in the field, those are the folks who will typically be the first to get in trouble because they have the opportunity. It's like opportunity youth, I guess. What would you do to try and find programming or to address the needs, the city's needs in general, of trying to find areas and pathways for opportunity youth to find a lever into being a productive member of society?
Sure. So, at the University of Memphis, we have a lot of different programs that are really it's pretty innovative stuff where we're really starting to be proactive about finding students, opportunity youth like that. It's providing things I think that interest people. A four-year degree at the University of Memphis or any college is not for everybody. It's not the thing that everybody should be striving for. Again, I mentioned earlier trade schools. More tech comes to mind. Schools like that where you can learn a skill and you can put that to use and make money and provide for your family. The city just has to be proactive at things like this. Again, it goes back to the summer programming, steering people towards the opportunities they're looking for. So trade school, four-year degree, and then helping high school students. I think catching people early is important.
Tell me your thoughts on the tax space. You talked about more trade schools, more opportunity for youth programs, programs that can help offset poverty. Is there enough money in the general fund to accomplish these programs?
I don't think there is. No. I think that's the big challenge that Memphis faces is that we unfortunately have the highest property tax rate in the state of Tennessee by a long shot, and we still don't have enough money for the things we need clearly to lift people out of poverty. So we can't rely entirely on the city, and we can't look at raising taxes because we already have the highest tax rate, and raising taxes will send people running for the suburbs, which is would be a major problem for us. So it would be my goal as a city council member to grow our tax base. And I have experience doing that as an economic development professional in the university district. But encouraging and attracting and recruiting business to come to Memphis is extremely important. Growing the tax base, providing jobs, again, that's how you get your way out of this. It's unfortunate, but we do not have enough money for all those programs right now.
What are your thoughts on recruiting business and attracting business? What do you think could be done that's not being done at this time?
The entities that work in the economic development sphere, like EDGE and CRA and some of the others, I think they do a pretty good job. The chamber as well. I think they do it every day. But when you talk about recruiting companies, I think being really, really proactive, going out and finding companies and telling them how good of a city Memphis is to do business in, making Memphis the most business-friendly city in America as we possibly can. Incentives, again, is something that it's a touchy subject, but it's just the way that the game works. And there's a lot of misconceptions, I understand, to pilots and tips and things like that. But those are tools that can be used to incentivize economic development as well.
So your thought is that you could be, as a member of the city council, you could be proactive as kind of an ambassador for the city, going out and recruiting companies?
Yeah, so I mean, the city council, that's really, I think, the best thing you can do as a city council member. You're not really in a position to, like Edge, for example, you're not in a position to make pilot offers, but you are an ambassador, and you are supposed to go out there and look for companies and tell them how great Memphis is, and bring them here and show them, and hopefully recruit them to the city.
These issues of poverty, blight, workforce development, they've been with us for years and years. Why is it so difficult to gain traction and make progress on these issues?
I think it's difficult because it's really a mountain of a problem that we have in Memphis, and I think it's very important, again, to elect people who are serious about taking these problems on. That's why that's why I'm running, because I'm a person who works every day in a smaller district of the city, the University District, to address these issues. And if we had 13 people on the city council who were focused on neighborhoods and improving blight, and really putting in the work to get that done, I think you see a difference. It's a huge problem, and as you mentioned, it's a generational challenge. So no one person can come in and fix it. It's really going to take a team effort of folks to be focused on it.
I want to follow up on that question, because one of the issues is that any candidate faced is that the job you are elected to, the office you're elected to, is just one aspect of who you are elected to. You also have a broader kind of pulpit, if you will, and you have a louder voice that you can weigh in on other issues. What would you choose to use your voice for if you're elected to this super district seat? Would you want to champion certain things or certain causes?
Sure. So, for me, pre-K again is important. I have a 5-year-old son, and we are fortunate enough to be able to pay to send him to preschool. And I understand that's not the case for a lot of folks. And so, again, really focusing on finding innovative ways. The council used the expired pilot revenue to fund the pre-K seats, and I think that's fantastic because it's not a tax increase, but it's an innovative way that they came up with to help fund those seats. And so that's my thing. Earlier you talked about do we have enough money for these programs? We in the general fund, no. But coming up with innovative solutions for funding things is something I'd like to do. Pre-K, and then again, my daily work is just getting in, doing the hard work that it takes to improve neighborhoods. So the little things, I get excited about, and somebody tells me there's a street light out. For some weird reason, that excites me that I get to go and fix that for them. So basic services, pre-K, things like that.
One of the issues, and you I think indicated it earlier, that one of the hurdles to getting a job and getting out of poverty is transportation, getting around from place to place, getting to the jobs if you're in an area that's inaccessible.
Yeah.
What would you do to try and provide more funding, if you would at all, for MATA? Or are there other potential solutions for our transit issues in this city?
The MATA issue to me is, I've read the transit vision. I think that obviously we have to improve our public transportation system in the city of Memphis. I would not support a tax increase to do that. It goes back to, again, finding other innovative ways. There's got to be state or federal grants of some sort, block grants, philanthropic dollars or corporate dollars to put towards that. Personally, I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about MATA simply because it's kind of a county-wide issue, and it's something that a lot of people are thinking about. Mayor Harris presented his plan recently. So I would be a person who would be a team player and a champion for improving MATA. My only condition is I don't think we should have a tax increase to do it.
Similar question about the schools. You wouldn't have direct oversight over schools either. it's a county SES function.
Yeah.
But you undeniably, as the schools go, so goes the region. What would you choose to spend your time on with the schools? Would you want to have an impact on education in this community?
Sure.
Apart from pre-K.
Yeah. So you hit the nail on the head. I mean, schools are extremely important. I mean, they affect, people choose where they live based on the schools. So obviously that's the most important thing to folks. Again, when we talk about, as Memphians, we pay our Shelby County property taxes, and 50% of that goes to the Shelby County schools. They have a $1.4 billion budget, and our city budget is $710 million.
Double. Yeah.
Exactly. So again, I would not be interested in talking about any sort of maintenance of effort or putting money towards the schools, because we already do as Shelby County taxpayers. That being said, again, kind of like the MATA issue, I understand it is an extremely important thing to our city. And I would, again, work hard to work with Shelby County schools, work with Shelby County government, to be an advocate and to be a person who is there to support them, maybe in other ways, beyond anything that involves a tax increase. So, there may be one-time expenses that the city might be able to help with at some point if we see a revenue increase. And again, providing summer programming that sort of fills in that gap between spring and fall semesters.
I have a last question, and it is the last question. I would have to check to make sure. The last question, and provide you a closing statement, is what have you learned about yourself and your district and city during this campaign?
Sure. So what I've learned about the district, and I grew up in Memphis, and so I was already familiar with all the neighborhoods. But what I've really learned is that generally people are really really positive about the city of Memphis, and positive about people running for city council in general. They're happy to see you. They're glad you're running. They just want, people, it doesn't matter if you live in Raleigh, if you live in Cordova, if you live in East Memphis, Midtown, every human wants the same thing. They just want to provide for their families, and they want to see their city succeed. So that, I was a little hesitant when I got into it because I wasn't sure how people might react, but it's been a really positive experience. Been happy to get out and meet people. And the thing I've learned about myself, it's a lot of work to run for a seat like this, and I guess the past few days I've learned how quickly I can sunburn, things like that. Yeah.
It doesn't hurt that it's about 99 degrees every day.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you, Cody. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
You bet.